Thank you so much, Edminda. So very nice to see everyone. Really nice to see some familiar faces on here as well. And a couple of you may have heard some of the things I will be saying today, but as Lisa's mentioned, it'll be quite a set of different questions, I imagine. So it'll be nice to get into the discussion element. I will start sharing the screen soon. Bear with me whilst I navigate Zoom. So going to check that hopefully now you can see my slides. I'm just going to adjust this. How does that look? Kind of like what you're expecting to see?
It looks great.
Looks good, yes.
Perfect, thank you guys. So I can't see you all anymore, but please do interrupt if there's any issues or problems on my end if I freeze or anything like that. But otherwise, we'll kick off. So this is a presentation on Oxfordshire's local nature recovery strategy, which I'm very pleased to say is now launched. And this
there's just like a sharing your screen thing at the bottom. I don't know whether you're able to hide that.
Can you see that? Can you?
Yes.
Look at that. That's so much better. Thank you. That's a new one for me to learn. There we go. So yes, this is a tool that will guide the creation of a targeted and resilient network for nature. So that is the goal and purpose of the LNRS. As a quick bit of background, there are 48 authorities across England who have been tasked to produce LNRSs. So you can see those areas shown on the map there. They're not all by county, some of them are split in different ways. So that's why they've been given the name responsible authorities. And that means that the task sits with them to lead the production of the LNRS. And different authorities have approached that in slightly different ways, but all of us have used guidance given to us by Natural England and DEFRA throughout that process. And the guidance has come throughout and is still being worked on in terms of the delivery. So it'd be interesting to hear ideas and views on delivery today as well. So you can see the areas there. And Oxfordshire, nice green bit in the middle, is surrounded by 6 neighbouring counties. So it's quite a particular opportunity area to improve connectivity north, south, east, west for South England. And we have been appointed as Oxfordshire County Council to deliver and lead the production of the strategy, but it was really important that wasn't done in isolation. So many of the people on the call today have been involved with helping shape the priorities. There we are. There we go. And get involved with really producing elements of the strategy, providing data to help shape the strategy. And Alison have worked tirelessly on some of the consultation reports, and we had a huge number of responses to the consultation. So I'll talk a bit about that later today as well. But the partners shown on the screen here today are those who have been closely involved in shaping the decision-making and process of the strategy for the past 2 years. And in addition to that, we've also had a great range of engagement from local people and organisations throughout the process we've taken in the past 2 years. So what I mean by that is in February to March 2024, we started our process of engagement of the LNRS. We started by going out to a wide range of people, asking about priorities for nature. So that could include wildlife, particular species or habitats. And we asked people about the actions they wanted to see be delivered across Oxfordshire. There was a particular focus at this point on priorities around achieving improved water quality, improving the quality of freshwater habitats, and basically improving connectivity across the landscape. There were some really, really obvious kind of priorities people were telling us about. We also asked people about any actions that they were taking, and we ran both a survey at that point, as well as 14 workshops, some in person, some online, some on weekends, some in the afternoon. So it varied a lot to try and invite as many people as possible to engage in those conversations. So at that point, we had over 1,000 people join us, and then we held a webinar relatively soon after that in May last year to present a first look at what we heard from the survey and the responses and the workshops. And we then wanted to show people in that webinar what the process was that we were going to use to turn priorities into both a map as well as the documents for the LNRS. And at that point, we also invited people to supply us with any information about spatial areas where they were already delivering nature recovery actions or were willing to deliver nature recovery actions. And that fed into our mapping process so that we understood where people were already willing to support biodiversity, and we could then look where possible to include those areas in the mapping as well. So we had 200 people join us for that webinar, but it is also recorded and available online. And we then held, well, before we held the public consultation, this is where we developed the draft strategy. So this point where we had asked all these over 1,000 people about priorities and important areas in the county, areas where they're already taking action. And we produced a draft version of the strategy. That was a map and documents that we knew we wanted to change, but we wanted to get people's views on. So we wanted to really develop it through the public consultation. So we put the draft version of the map and strategy up online and held a formal public consultation around this time last year to enable people to see the draft strategy and tell us what they thought was good, what they thought needed changing, how we could make changes. And we got a really strong positive response. I think this was helped because we made a real effort to go out to events. So we went out to about 50 events, meetings during that 6-week period with about 700 people and organisations at the time. So once that closed, we then had a phenomenal 2,100 responses from people, with lots of that being pins on our map tool. So we shared the map of the strategy, which I'll show you kind of how that looks later today, but there were pins all over the county that helped us tweak and change boundaries or adjust the types of actions we've mapped to specific locations. Some of those were from farmers who had particular interest in arable field reversion options, so we could build in landowner planning as well. So it has taken us a while to make all those changes, but it's been very much worth it. So we took a number of months to collect the responses, produce the report that is now up online. So Alison and her team worked really diligently on pulling together all of those responses, producing summaries of what was said, and we now have a report up online that describes what was said during that consultation, the types of themes that emerged, and also how we responded through the LNRS, so all the changes we made. And we are now at the point, having had that approved by all of the authorities across Oxfordshire, so our city, district, county councils have now all approved the local nature recovery strategy, which has meant we have now published that and finalised the strategy, with a total number of around 3,500 respondents getting in touch with us in the 2 years where we made that. So it's very exciting. Recently launched about 2 weeks ago. And during one of our workshops early in the process, this image shows the types of priorities, actions, and the visions that people came up with repeatedly throughout the LNRS engagement process. It's a good capture of lots of the types of things that were said. So there was a range of things, whether that's about developing a pride in biodiversity and engaging with everybody, so building the LNRS into perhaps national curricula or other policies. But the real goal was clear, was to pass on functioning, healthy ecosystems to future generations, with an acknowledgement that we're working in a changing climate system and the need to do things like store carbon, tackle pollution, so that we can, in fact, pass on a system that is fit to support us into the future and that we can support. Additionally, when people were telling us about the types of habitats, they also told us about how they'd like to see those habitats laid out, and connectivity was a huge, clear priority for people. So that included comments up here, like connectivity via the waterways and watercourses, so using natural features that are linear as opportunities to build and improve connectivity. And connectivity as well, mentioned down here, across key networked areas too. And you'll see throughout here species that were mentioned and are dotted around, and those came through some of the workshops and surveys too. Overall, we want to be in the position to help nature recover, not just survive. So this is the purpose of the strategy, really, we developed from these priorities that people told us. And now our published document has got within it the LNRS vision. And our vision is to achieve a well-connected, biodiversity-rich network of nature that's resilient into the future, restored for the health and well-being of future generations and for nature's own sake. And in order to achieve that vision, we've outlined a couple of principles that would be guiding that delivery of the LNRS. So the first is to enhance what we already have, so looking at existing areas that are particularly important for biodiversity and ensuring that those are supported to continue. Then to create habitats and new habitats in a way that achieves that connectivity. So looking to create this network of nature that's physically connected as far as possible. And additionally, not forgetting that in the kind of targeted system of creating corridors, that we still need to make space for nature everywhere, in schools, homes, workplaces, and across agricultural and rural businesses, so that all of the county is more permeable for wildlife and various species. So what's now in the LNRS? Well, we have two main elements, and this is standard for most of the LNRSs across the country. Everyone was asked to create both a local habitat map and a statement of biodiversity priorities. So I'll talk you through the local habitat map first. It is now an online and interactive tool that when you open it, it looks like this image on the left here. And I'll give you an example of how you zoom into it and break that down later today. But as a high-level summary, the orange areas showing up, there's 6.5% of the county in orange areas, and those are the core or designated sites for biodiversity in the county. That includes things like SSSIs, SACs, local nature reserves, local wildlife sites, and irreplaceable habitats defined by the NPPF. So that includes things like ancient woodlands and lowland fens. There's a set of habitats we were allowed to include there. And that was a set of criteria designed by DEFRA. So those are the types of habitats you're allowed to include and the types of sites. And that was to try and maintain consistency across the country. So for Oxfordshire, we have 6.5% of these agreed to be important areas for biodiversity, but they are quite fragmented or spread around the county in not always the most equal manner. So there's quite a difference in distinction as to where some of those sites are. So the LNRS was tasked with identifying in the future, from now and into the future, where should or could resources be targeted by a range of organisations to achieve the vision we set out, which is that connected and resilient network for nature. So the LNRS worked on a process using systematic conservation planning as our approach, which is a sort of discursive method of agreeing targets and viewing the outputs and then redoing things. And our tool, for those who might be interested in the technical element, was MarkSan, which we used as an optimization tool. I won't talk too much about the detail of that today, but if anyone's interested in that in the future, I can delve into exactly how the map was made. But that gives us our 6.5% with our 34% additional areas where the LNRS has said these are key opportunity areas to recover biodiversity through nature recovery work. So that gives us a targeted network to focus on producing in Oxfordshire. On the right-hand side, alongside the local habitat map, we have a statement of biodiversity priorities. And this is where the detail is really contained. So we have a description of Oxfordshire that talks about what's in the county, the fact that we're 70+% land use is agricultural and breaks down the other types of land use as well. It talks about pressures on the environment, the existing sites that are important, and sets out the vision of the strategy as well. Then we have the habitat priorities, which is a list of actions that need to be delivered for a variety of habitat types for us to achieve the priorities set out by that large range of people we've spoken to previously. So taking 3,500 responses, people told us these various things are important, and this list is where it contains the actions that need to be taken to deliver those priorities. So this one summarises different types of habitats that need to be created or enhanced. That could include things like enhancing fens, enhancing ancient woodland, creating new grasslands, and it breaks it down in real detail and offers guidance and management handbooks in there, as well as specifying exactly which UK habitat codes or UK HABS codes we mean when we say create scrub, for example. It then kind of identifies exactly what type we mean. So we've described Oxfordshire. We have a list of these important actions to take for habitats. And by improving and creating habitats across the county, we expect that a great number of species would improve. And we're looking increasingly at lists of endangered and vulnerable species. But these actions are expected to significantly improve the situation for very many of them. However, it was written into the LNRS guidance by Natural England that we should also look to identify species who won't be helped by sort of usual approaches to nature recovery work, and those species which need an extra or additional action were listed then on our species priorities list. So our species list is not a list of everyone's favorite species or a list of the type of species that are easiest to help. Instead, it's species which are threatened or near threatened and which need a particular action above and beyond general habitat improvements and creation. For example, on here, we've got the Barbary carpet moth, which needs very specifically the planting of new common barberry plants in the right location. And so we've mapped out where in particular you could take that action. So that is what is now contained within the LNRS. And I'd like to take you into an example of the map so that all comes together now. This is what the map tool will look like if you log into it. It's online, it's publicly accessible, and it's an interactive tool. So you can zoom in and click on things and get responses from the map. So when it's loaded, it's showing you that network we've talked about, showing key opportunity areas to focus nature recovery efforts with specific actions mapped in all of the network there. So any of those green or orange areas, we have, as you zoom in, you'll see we've mapped specific actions to all those locations. So I'm going to run you through an example of zooming into the map. So as you zoom in, the network becomes more clear, and as you get closer, more detail will load. As you get into a certain point through zooming in, the detail of all the different actions we've mapped in that network will load up and become clear. So now you'll start to see all these different colours. You don't need to know what all the different colours mean. If you click on any part of the map, it will tell you the actions there, but the colours help show some of that difference. So going right in, I'm interested in this field that's in here. So I'm going to be zooming into that location. But it can be helpful sometimes once you get in to turn on the satellite imagery so you get more of a sense of what's on the ground. It can be challenging to know exactly where you are from this view of the tool. So by clicking on these 4 squares here, it will open this base map gallery where you can turn on imagery, and that will allow you to get a sense check of what's on the ground and make sure you've navigated to the right place. You can turn on and off any of the LNRS data or other data that's supplied alongside the LNRS on the left here by clicking these eye icons. So right now I've turned the data off just to make sure I'm looking at the right area. So I am not the landowner of this site, but hypothetically, if I was, I'm looking at what nature recovery actions might be recommended by the LNRS in that location there. So I'll turn the data back on, and now you can click anywhere on the map and it will provide you with the recommendations from the LNRS for that location. So where the cursor is where I'll be clicking. And once I do, you will have a box that will pop up and it will tell you the potential measures, so the possible actions that you could take in that site as recommended by the strategy. And in this case, what we've mapped is the suggestion to create areas of calcareous species-rich grasslands in suitable locations. But you'll see in the bottom corner, it says 1 of 5. So there are multiple actions that could be delivered on this site recommended by the LNRS. And you can click through them using these arrows. So if I click here, we'll then see that another possible action for this site could be to create new varied ponds in suitable locations. So that helps to enhance biodiversity and create more clean water habitats. Clicking again, we can also see a recommendation to create or enhance flower-rich grasslands in a way that has plentiful populations of violets as well as light patches of scrub for the dark green fritillary butterfly. So this is a specific species action that we've mapped onto here, which can help complement or layer up with the other actions and benefit both habitats, but also the particular need of that species in order to recover. Here as well, you could create new areas of habitat that contain a matrix of habitat types. So that could include small woodland patches, scattered trees, scrub and grassland. And we start to build up a picture now in our mind from the LNRS recommendations. On this site, the landowner or manager could be opting for a mostly grassland with patches of scrub, allowing for trees to grow through. They could create additional ponds here, and they could particularly focus on the creation of a violet-rich habitat as well. And in that way, they could achieve all of the measures suggested. Alternatively, they could just choose one or none of the measures. But hopefully this recommendation will bring more support to those looking to take these actions and bring attention to what they're doing. Finally, across any part of the map, there will also be a reminder that pops up saying, don't forget, you can use the lists that I've talked about earlier, so the habitat, biodiversity priorities, and the species priorities to see any other actions that you might want to take in that area. So some people might want to do things that could be delivered in most areas of the county that are more challenging for us to map. So there are certain actions we haven't been able to add to this map. An example of that is creation of scrub, an important action, but one which is particularly challenging to map down to be suitable more or less in a particular location. So we might have landowners taking forward particular actions that we haven't mapped out and that are still contributing towards those habitat actions on our list. So what I mean by some of the information in the list, I want to give you a quick example of what the detail in those lists looks like. So on our map tool, you'll remember we had a violet kind of encouragement action there for the dark green fritillary. So it's creating grassland in a way that could produce plentiful populations of violets for the butterfly in question. And if you wanted to have a look at our species list, what you'll find is more detail and information about that action itself, as well as links to, in this case, butterfly conservation fact sheets that will give you the detail of exactly what type of grassland and in what manner you could manage that, and how that can benefit the dark green fritillary. So it gives you real detail and links to documents that are going to really support people to deliver those kinds of projects. And if you'd like to see where the dark green fritillary or any of the 60 species on our list has been, there is a link to the map, which is in our document, and it shows you dark green fritillary records from 1990 to 25, so roughly the past 30 years or so. It shows the distribution of each of those species in the county, and that can help inform your decision making as well. Similarly, if you wanted to find the detail for the habitat actions, we have that contained within our statement of biodiversity priorities, and for each of our measures. So on the map we had written create areas of calcareous species rich grassland. If the landowner or manager wanted to take that forward, they can find the corresponding measure on our list and find more detail in there. So it tells you exactly the type of actions you could take to deliver this action, using perhaps green hay from similar wildflower grasslands. And then there are creation and management guidance documents linked there as well. As well, I mentioned there are some target habitat codes built into the document now. So it explains exactly the type of lowland calcareous grassland and code we mean for that. And this is particularly relevant for biodiversity net gain. So those people delivering biodiversity net gain will be particularly interested in making sure they achieve the types of codes that are listed in this document. Okay, so that is a lot of the detail that shows you how an example runs through. And if you wanted to take away this information for your own use, we have built a tool into our map here. It's this little pin icon in a circle. And once you click it, it'll open up something called PM Layer Area Query. What you can do with this tool is you can draw around any location that you're interested in. It's getting ahead of myself there. And you can select that area. Once you've selected the area, you get this report of all the different actions in that area and the shape files for it. So you can click to then export that data and use that for your own project development or your own use in whatever way you need to. So whether you're looking to analyze the LNRS or use it for a plan, you can export the data that way. If you're having any difficulty with that, you can always get in touch with me as well. Let me know if you need, for example, the whole county shape files. I can provide those separately. So all our data is open government license, hopefully building that capacity for people to take this away and use it for their own benefit. We have produced a video as well on our webpage that demonstrates how to use this function. So you can point people towards that if they're interested in how to draw around areas and take that data away themselves. So we're getting towards the end now. In summary, the strategy has created, and all of those working on it have created, a collaboratively produced tool that offers a blueprint for nature recovery actions. This is not the kind of thing any one organisation can deliver alone. We must all work together if we want to achieve this vision, and that was why it was so important that the production of the strategy was so collaborative. We need to all work together across people, organisations, land holdings, estates, to deliver that network if we would like to create a resilient network for nature. So this acts as a guide for all of us to be able to use and target our resources towards those types of actions or locations in a joined up manner. Landowners or managers can do other things from what we've mapped. The strategy is there to offer recommendations towards the vision. It is not telling you what you have to do or prescribing in any way. So we don't have any legal powers to require anyone to have to deliver those actions. Some habitat actions will still always require permissions before you take them, and by the LNRS mapping, what's on there, we haven't bypassed permissions. You may still need permission to take actions on your land, and that has always been the case prior to the LNRS as well. But you can do on-the-ground checks whilst you're also using the LNRS recommendations. So you could download data for a particular area you're interested in, start developing a project plan, and you could get in touch with TVERC, who offer data searches. And through doing that, you can get more biodiversity and ecology information about the site, surrounding wildlife, and any recent changes about near that site to help you inform your decision for the plan as well. Overall, with this tool, we are intending that the LNRS will incentivize actions in those locations and not that it will constrain people. The LNRS hasn't got legal scope to prevent development or any other land use in the mapped areas. So there is some government guidance online you can have a read through if you'd really like. And it says the main purpose of the strategies is to identify locations for the creation or improvement of habitat, which is most likely to benefit both nature and the wider environment. So here it states that quite clearly the strategies do not force owners or managers of land to make changes, and instead the government is encouraging action through opportunities for funding and investment. So this is the real key, is where we can align funding and investment opportunities to the LNRS in order to incentivize the delivery. Additionally, it's worth noting there will be, or there is now, a requirement on all authorities and public bodies to have regard to this strategy in their local decision making. And you can find more information at Planning Law on their blog as well. There's quite a lot of information up there, but local authorities, parish councils and public bodies are now discussing and preparing for how to embed the LNRS into their decision making. So authorities are set up to be using this as a tool and an evidence base to inform their decision making. What are we doing next? Well, we have received some funding for the next 12 months at the local level. So DEFRA is funding these various responsible authorities. We have received 12 months of further funding to continue working in partnership with organisations and local people to help embed the strategy into decision making, help people use and understand the strategy. So coming to various talks like this, so you might see me around quite a lot at the moment, talking with everybody about how to use and understand this tool. We're then identifying and supporting strategic projects to develop and deliver actions across the county. There is a limited amount of resource that the LNRS holds itself, but there's a lot of resource available that we can be linking strategic projects to. That doesn't always mean finance. It can also be finding the right people, making connections, helping people use data. So there's different ways we could be supporting strategic projects. And we need to identify and find strategic projects in the county. And that is a process that is now starting and will be led through the Oxfordshire Local Nature Partnership, with ourselves also supporting that. So along the way, we're hoping that we will be helping strategic projects to deliver actions and develop plans, embedding the LNRS into decision making and helping people use and understand it. But it's important that we don't forget to monitor and evaluate the actions happening across the county. So we are developing a tool at the moment which will enable people to record spatially, so draw onto a map where they've taken actions in the county and what they've done in those locations. And that will help us build up this picture of who's effectively kind of colouring in the strategy already, who's done what and where. And that will help inform future planning as well as the strategy when we come to review and republish it. So I forgot to say here at the top that in 3 to 10 years' time, government will ask all of those 48 authorities to review and republish all LNRSs using the latest data. We don't yet know whether that'll be on the 3-year or the 10-year end of that. So it's important that we get on to make sure we do monitor and evaluate from as early an opportunity as possible so that we've got as much data from local people to help inform future revisions of the strategy. So if you're interested in delivering the LNRS, some of you may already well be doing that. There are things you could do now. So you could either take one of the actions we've mapped or continue to be taking actions if you're already underway with delivery of projects. There are mapped actions on that map we've been looking at. You could also look at our habitat list to see which unmapped actions you might be interested in taking. And that includes things like creating scrub, creating traditional orchards, things that are quite challenging to pin down to a particular location, but could be beneficial to biodiversity if delivered anywhere across the county. You can also apply for funding or ask for support from local organisations in Oxfordshire, letting them know you're intending to deliver the LNRS, which priorities or which species you're intending to support, and invite them to help you with that through either additional funding or support. And prepare or deliver a particular species action. So these can be very engaging ways to produce projects and develop plans and get people working together for the same goal. I don't know if anyone's on the side of representing farmers as well, but it can be a great competition to help try and really bring up numbers of certain species across agricultural land too. So there are ways to talk with neighbours, collaborate across boundaries, whether that's administrative or geographic boundaries. And doing so, we can then support and align strategies across Oxfordshire with the LNRS. So whether those are things like local plans or individual strategies for organisations, people are already starting to build the LNRS into those, which is a really exciting opportunity for us to all work together to deliver on that. And similarly, funding bodies are looking now at the opportunities to align some of their funding with the LNRS, so that we can be confident that funds are making a difference towards the vision shared by people in the county of a connected corridor for nature recovery. So you might be able to embed this strategy into your own decision-making tools or processes as well. That is all from me today, but I'm very happy to answer questions or listen to comments as well, or ideas about what we might be doing next. So if you'd like to propose suggestions for events we could go to, people to talk to, landowners to engage with, that is all very welcome. And similarly, if you've got particular questions about that, please let me know. You can reach the strategy by scanning there. Hopefully my QR code's still working, but otherwise you can always search for LNRS Oxfordshire online and it will come up. Thank you all very much for listening. I'm going to stop sharing there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chloe. That was a fascinating, very, very clear presentation. I'm sure we'll have lots of points to discuss. I'll kick off with a question. You mentioned that Oxfordshire bound all the neighbouring authorities, the 6 neighbouring authorities, and this process is obviously in parallel across authorities. How much discussion, if any, has there been with neighbouring authorities, so to align priorities and strategies and approaches to activity?
Yes, so we met with our neighbouring authorities, and the 6 of them. The sort of time frame we set up for meetings was once monthly. So we had a relatively short but very helpful discussion about once every month with the neighbouring authorities. Some were in better positions to be able to engage than others because the process of the LNRS meant that people started producing their strategies at different times. So some were still developing their ideas and plans, and sometimes were then less able to share kind of exactly what they were planning in terms of mapping or priorities. But by doing that throughout the past 2 years, that meant that we had the opportunity to link up when everyone did have, when everyone was at the right position. So one of the examples is through Berkshire and Bucks, we were able to get the draft versions of their map, and also for Wiltshire and Swindon. And what we were able to do before we finalised ours was to ensure that we put all the maps together in draft form and created bridging points across the county boundaries if there were situations where we had mapped a connecting corridor up to a certain point and they maybe either hadn't or maybe we hadn't. So what we did, we were able to bring the maps together, create bridges to ensure there was connectivity. And in some cases, there were particular areas where we highlighted the importance of them from our county's shared priorities to our neighbours. And one of the examples was the River Colne on our border with Swindon and Wiltshire. And whilst we had mapped our side of the river, the other side hadn't been mapped. So we shared that that would be an important priority area to map for the Wiltshire and Swindon side on behalf of the Oxfordshire priorities. So we worked closely with people for quite a long time on that. And we're pleased to say the connectivity is looking really good. We have now put some of the maps side by side, and it will now be Natural England's job to do that across the whole country and to be able to show that connectivity.
And are the neighbouring authorities at the same stage? Have they all published their LNRSs now?
About half of our neighbours have published their LNRSs. So Berkshire, Wiltshire, Swindon and Bucks are all up online. I am not sure that West Northants, Warwickshire or Gloucestershire have yet. They have had drafts out, so they're not going to be far off, but I haven't been able to see whether they've published those yet.
Okay. Thank you. Susanna.
Yes, thank you. That was a brilliant presentation. Thanks a lot, Chloe. I just wanted to ask very quickly, could you say a bit more, please, about the Oxfordshire Local Nature Partnership? Because you mentioned it and I'm not quite sure how it works, so I'm sure I should know. And then I believe that we do have beavers in the county at a secret location. I don't know if you can say a bit more about that.
Well, not if it's a secret. Let me see. So I'll find the Local Nature Partnership information. So you could search Oxfordshire Local Nature Partnership to find their site, but they have been set up now for, I think, just a bit over 2 years in Oxfordshire, and different authority areas are quite different in their setup for their LNPs, as they're called. But in our case, we're really fortunate. We've got a particularly strong local nature partnership made up from authorities, charities, trusts and funding bodies, as well as environmental organisations and groups. So together they have over about 80 organisations or partners who are acting as members, and that includes local authorities as well. And that is a particularly strong resource and driving force for nature improvements in the county. So there are lots of other groups as well, but generally lots of them feed back into the local nature partnership. So it's a particularly strong partnership that we are looking to be involved with, both through the strategy creation as we did, but now into delivery. Is particularly good opportunity to bring together all of the relationships and the work that's already happening through there. And they have a variety of subgroups within the partnerships. They do have a board that oversees the decision making, but they then have groups like the Health and Nature group, and Nature Finance as well. So there's lots of different activities within that umbrella happening. So yes, we'll be continue to be close with them. And the secret beavers. As far as any records go, there are no beaver records in Oxfordshire.
Right, we can leave it at that for now. Okay, Louise.
Hi, Chloe.
Hiya.
Thank you for that. That was really good. There's so much work gone into that. It looks really great. My question really is, and I keep asking this question of DEFRA as well, so apologies if it's a bit repetitious for some, but you talked about aligning funding and investment with the actions.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably where all the LNRSs will kind of succeed or fail, is delivery on the ground. So I just wondered if you had anything more that's specific that you could say about where you anticipate the funding coming from, kind of in the short term and perhaps the longer term.
Yeah, thank you. So we have a number of existing funding sources across the county at the moment, some coming from local authorities that are supporting potentially specific actions. So West Oxfordshire's had a traditional orchard one, funding pool set up, but we have also local organisations dedicated to funding grants for community groups such as Trust for Oxfordshire's Environment. There are then funding sources coming through a lot of the national and regional bodies, and we have some that have recently set up. So Big Chalk is an example of a relatively new nature recovery fund that's moved about £800,000 recently, and will have future rounds of funding coming forward as well to help those who are looking at the chalk-related projects. But we do know that what we've got currently isn't filling the gap and that it's not enough. That's quite clear. And there's been work by Leverhulme to indicate that we need about £800 million in order to recover nature in the way that we do need. So where are we going to get the rest of that? It's a brilliant question. We're asking DEFRA and others that all the time. In the meantime, locally, the Local Nature Partnership is currently recruiting for a nature finance role. So that's trying to fill that gap of moving finances into projects. So they're looking for somebody with that skill set. So very hopeful that we get someone who will be helping to deliver that kind of work and moving money down into projects. And then separately, we are also in communication with an organisation called Rebuilding Nature. And they are looking at moving investment from various large public organisations such as infrastructure projects. And they're looking to create these effectively like targeted networks for nature, which we've produced through the LNRS. And we're looking to propose that Oxfordshire becomes a pilot for that. So they're looking to move money from infrastructure projects or large scale projects happening across the county or country and move money into those local efforts for nature recovery. So there are things happening, but I can't kind of promise exactly what we'll get, but we're going to keep working for it because we need to.
Thank you, that's great. Can I squeeze in another one? Sorry, yeah. While I'm on, I just wondered if there's anything more you could tell us about the National Forest proposals, the Oxford, Cambridgeshire National Forest, or whether you might not be the right person to. There might be someone else on this call, but
yeah, if anyone on this call does know a bit more, please let me know as well. It'd be great to be linked up. We've heard the announcement, and we're very keen and excited to get involved. But at the moment, no further detail has been shared down, so I'm slightly in the dark on that one. But sounds like an exciting opportunity if we can get the right locations for that. It's unclear at the moment from what I know as to whether that's Oxford as in Oxford to Cambridge, or whether they mean a part of Oxfordshire to Cambridge. So I'd be very keen to hear more information if anyone does know that. Thanks.
Pete?
Yes. First of all, I have been in complete awe of this piece of work ever since I saw the first draft. I think it's a staggeringly good effort, and Chloe deserves a massive praise. Couple of questions. It's very easy to say for us to think in buckets, like nature goes in the countryside and not in towns and cities, but we actually know that bringing green spaces and nature into towns and cities is important, both for adaptation and also for the health of human beings. How much did you manage to create pathways that went right through places people live rather than stopping at the edges? And the second question, kind of related to that, I managed to get to the National Emergency Briefing last week. And my summary of that would be that most of our worst nightmares are in the base case now. And so adaptation becomes very important. And I know that DEFRA was very discouraging of any idea that you might mention adaptation, things that you might do to stop flooding or mitigate heat and so on. How much did we manage accidentally to slip that in? Or is that version 2.0?
No, we're okay. So yes, thank you, Pete. And I'm pleased to be able to now show you the final one as well, because you were so involved in the early days. So it's really nice to be able to do that full circle. So for the first question around urban biodiversity and biodiversity near people, our first draft didn't have that as strongly. It had focused on the sort of the core ecological networks, which doesn't often take people through towns and cities or urban environments. But it was really clear through our public consultation that people wanted to see more of that and the importance of that. And we knew it was important, but from early guidance at that time, that hadn't been the direction LNRSs were pushed in. But just at the time we did our public consultation as well, that changed quite a bit on the national guidance. So we built in pathways through urban areas using potential corridors, and that included cycleways that were green route cycleways, rail networks, rail sidings, and watercourses. So using those three types of corridors that went through urban areas, we then brought more attention on the map, and you'll see those now on the map at all if you look at any of the sort of towns and cities. So that has brought a lot more connectivity through urban areas with the potential to bring targeted resource for nature closer to people, which we are really pleased to be able to have done now. And I think with that, we have also brought in an extra data layer on the map. So you can go onto the layers on the side, and there is some information there from Martha Crockett's work. So she identified 16 different particularly LSOAs, or neighbourhoods, that are particularly deprived in terms of their access to green spaces. So those are identified on the map tool as well, and that tries to bring more attention to the fact that those places in Oxfordshire could particularly benefit from that kind of support and encouragement and improvement for biodiversity. They are also challenging areas because it's been high development areas. So retrofitting nature is very challenging, but at the same time, there's still opportunities to enhance what's there and make improvements for people. And there's a lot of different species actions that could be taken in those places too. So there's quite a lot now added from the people side, but the wider benefits, yes, that kind of went through different cycles in terms of the guidance as to whether to bring those in and map them or not. And what we did was we spoke with the Biodiversity Advisory Group, which is one of Oxfordshire Local Nature Partnerships groups, and we also took into account all of the responses from people locally. And flood risk mitigation, or flood relief, it was such a huge response. It was such a big, important priority, as was also then improving the situation for farmers and not leaving people with fully flooded fields throughout, and also supporting various different other wider benefits. So we worked closely with Alison, who's on the call today, to try and identify which of the actions matched well to which types of ecosystem services that could be provided. And that detail is in some of our written documents. But on the map, the response from most people was, if we were able to create this large, connected, resilient network, we will provide most of those benefits as well. In addition to that, we've also mapped some of the areas where you might be particularly able to focus natural flood management opportunities or erosion regulation opportunities. So within the map, if people are looking to deliver particular wider benefits, there are locations mapped out for that. But it's challenging to break down exactly which action is going to deliver exactly which benefit, because there's so many opportunities from each action. I've rambled slightly there, so we'll stop. Does that cover the question, Pete?
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're approaching the hour. I'll leak to about 5 past the hour if some people need to leave, of course.
That's fine, yeah.
There's so many interesting questions. Nicola Emu-Brown.
Hi, Chloe. Thank you so much for this fantastic resource. It's going to be invaluable. And I'm wondering whether this is now done and dusted and finished, or whether there are opportunities for the community to contribute to improving it for, into the future. I noticed I couldn't resist going and having a look at the little bits of Oxfordshire that I know particularly well. And some of the polygons in the map are quite crude, and actually in one particular area I found they're really not in the right place at all. But I wonder whether there is an opportunity for us all as a community to help put them back in the right place and to upgrade the quality of the information in there, because this is going to be such a fantastic resource for us all to use.
Yeah, exactly. So through the consultation, we got a huge number of pins that the goal of our consultation, in our mind, was to get in touch with as many people in as many areas of the county as possible to try and adjust our initial mapping, and where possible, then improve the quality and the specificity of the polygons and what's labelled under there. So the way that most of them have been produced uses soil data information from Cranfield, so some of the latest soil data, as well as 60 plus different data sets from a range of different organisations. And by putting them all together, we identified opportunities in areas, but we're fully aware this is high level county scale mapping, and it's hugely challenging to nail, the exact ground conditions of any site. So through the public consultation, we got a huge number of responses that helped us refine exactly what we could map in those locations. But no, we couldn't get all 700,000 people in the county, unfortunately. So what I hope is that through the publication of this tool, people start to see the real potential and the power of it, and then hope to engage further in the future republications and revisions in 3 to 10 years' time. The Office for Environmental Protection has pushed that LNRS be on the 3-year end, meaning that we could be reviewing these quite soon if government agrees. So in the meantime, if you can tell us about what you're already doing or actions in those areas that could be particularly beneficial, we can then be looking to build that into our future mapping, make it even stronger, make it, build in that local data and knowledge to really get them more specific. I hope that helps. Thank you.
And Nick Mottram? Nick, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, just kicking everything into action. Yeah, Chloe, as others have said, brilliant work bringing this together and also bringing so many people along on that journey with you, and that goes to all the wider team involved. My question is about biodiversity net gain, and I'm thinking back to the early days of the process. There was a lot of discussion about how BNG might link into the nature recovery strategy, and even optimistic suggestions about how you might have higher levels of BNG required within the recovery areas. Where does that stand at the moment?
Yeah. So currently, some of the local planning authorities are preparing guidance on how biodiversity planning, BNG and the LNRS all align with each other. So that's being shared at the moment and being worked up. For BNG, what we can say about the LNRS is that in any of those mapped areas where we've suggested an action, if people deliver at least one of those actions, then they have the opportunity to get, instead of 1 credit for their area, so 1 unit for their area, they can get a multiplier of 15%. So if in the network you're developing a BNG project and you're delivering the action the LNRS has asked for, you get a 15% uplift on the amount of finance that you're going to receive for delivering that action. So it is an exciting opportunity to direct BNG efforts towards those project areas. And we do have some BNG habitat banks that have come up in those areas already. So that'll be quite exciting to see how well the LNRS maps to their delivery. And I think as well within the university, others have been reviewing the network we've mapped to see how well that could drive BNG efforts. So I can't speak for the outcomes there, but perhaps maybe that might be a future topic that others would like to cover on another call, because I think we could delve into BNG for quite a while, and some of my planning colleagues would be pretty well placed to respond to you further on that. But yes, other than that 1.15, that sort of 15% multiplier that people get, that is the incentive we know about to help drive BNG towards the LNRS.
Good, thank you.
What I suggest is both Julian and Steve give your questions, and then Chloe can answer both of those to save a bit of time.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot, Chloe. It was so informative. Following on from Nick's point, I'm particularly concerned about biodiversity net gain and areas that might come under the axe by developers. Do you think there's a sufficient uplift in biodiversity net gain scores for those that carrying out baseline assessments to try and increase the penalties for destroying areas that have been identified by the local nature recovery strategy as sort of priority? Or do you think the DEFRA metric is probably not giving enough weighting for that particular thing?
Yeah. This is a question that I think we need to monitor a bit of the delivery to see how well or not it's performing. People have got major concerns about biodiversity net gain as a metric, and others can see some of the positives within it. So I'm definitely not here to either defend or promote the metric itself. But I am very interested to see if, like you're asking, does that uplift drive the type of action and delivery of those actions recommended within the LNRS? We don't know yet, but others within the university have been trying to do that assessment to see, is the significance multiplier enough to get the actions in those areas and to drive enhancement towards them instead of having them be developed. I don't know the answer yet, I'm afraid, but let's keep an eye on it. And I think the work being done in the university is going to be one of the most informative pieces that we can do to develop our understanding there.
Okay, and Steve.
Hi, Chloe. Yeah, thanks for that. Hi, Chloe. Great work there. Can I just start? This is a technical question. So the potential measures per location, are they suggested by experts, i.e. by hand, or do you work them out using some technical method, such as AI, for example?
Yeah. So we used a software that is an optimization software. So it's not AI, but it identifies from the data you give it the best ways to achieve the outcomes you want. So you can set targets and you can say, of all the woodland in the county, we want to make sure at least 65% or something is included within the network. You could then repeat that process for a number of different areas in the county identify the types of priorities people said. So if people want all the watercourses in, we can ensure it's 100%. Similarly for chalk streams, things like that. And you can set those different targets, and the system has the ability to optimize that network faster than we're able to by hand. However, we need human oversight of that process, which is why we put so much time into our public consultation to do so. You can then tweak and review it to make changes. So whilst it's not AI, it has been greatly assisted by the technology that we used. And yeah, I'd be happy to kind of talk to people separately about that whole process, because it's quite an in-depth process. And there was another thing I wanted to add, but it's gone from my mind, so sorry about that.
Well, can I just ask, is it bespoke software? Is it something that's sort of generally available, like a CH handiness or something?
Yeah, so we brought in support for using the tool from a professor at the University of Kent, but the software itself is available for free online, or was at the time we used it, and it's called Marxan, Marxan, and you'll be able to find that online as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
Steve, it's quite widely used in biodiversity prioritization around the world. It's quite well established.
Oh, okay, great. Right, I've learned something today.
Okay, great. Okay, we should wrap up. But that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you. It's really exciting to see what the work you've done there, and to see this enthusiasm from everyone to partner with it. Separately, at some point, I'd love to. I know the university's been involved, the Leverhulme Centre's been involved through Alison and others, and Martha and others in this work. And I'd love to discuss how we can support the next few years of activity in this as well. But I think that's probably a separate offline conversation at some point.
Thank you so much, everyone. And yes, to those of you on the call who've been so involved, we couldn't have done this without you all. It's really exciting to be at this point and going into delivery. So thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. And pretty nice to see everyone as well. Have a good rest of the month.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.